Do you believe that the signs of the universe can appear in the most unexpected ways? Imagine losing everything that gave your life meaning, and just when the world seems completely empty, something as simple as an injured parrot lands on your balcony. Could it be mere coincidence? Or a gift sent to help you start over? This is the story of a couple who, after facing one of the greatest pains anyone could endure, found hope in a new beginning through an unexpected visitor. And the ending of this story will leave you speechless. The rain was relentless, heavy, as if the sky itself was mourning alongside them. Each drop hitting the roof served as a painful reminder, an echo of the worst day of Sophia and Liam's lives. They didn't need words to share the weight of that sound. Both knew it brought back the unbearable memory. The accident had been swift, cruel, and final. Miguel, their only son, just 3 years old, had been taken from them on a treacherous curve in the road. His absence turned their home into a frozen place, stuck in time. Miguel's room remained untouched, his toys still neatly arranged, his clothes still hanging in the tiny wardrobe. For Sophia, the house was unbearable yet impossible to leave. Every corner held traces of her son. The scent of his baby shampoo still lingered in the air, like a living memory she couldn't let go of. Liam, on the other hand, retreated into silence. He spent hours sitting on the porch, staring at the road, as if waiting for something, or someone, to return. But what always came back was the guilt. If only I had driven slower, he thought. That rainy afternoon, they returned from the cemetery, soaked and defeated. They had left flowers on Miguel's grave, but the ritual was just a small solace. The pain still consumed them. When they reached the porch, they saw something unexpected. A parrot was there, huddled, shivering from the cold. It looked so small and vulnerable that Sophia felt her heart clench. It was as if the world, so cruel to them, had now chosen another defenseless being to target. The bird was a mix of fragility and color. Its feathers, which might have once been vibrant, were now soaked and clinging to its thin body. The right wing hung at an odd angle, a clear sign something was wrong. Sophia knelt slowly, observing the small creature with care. There was something in its eyes, not just fear, but a kind of resignation, as if it understood its fate was no longer in its own control. She felt an immediate connection, a deep need to act. Liam hesitated. He didn't want to get involved, didn't want to carry more weight on a heart already so worn and heavy. But as he watched Sophia gently pick up the parrot and wrap it in a towel, he realized that perhaps, just perhaps, this was something she needed. Inside the house, they improvised a nest using a shoebox and an old towel. Sophia carefully dried the bird while Liam searched for something it could eat. They worked in silence, but it wasn't the crushing, empty silence they had grown used to. This was a silence filled with purpose. As Sophia tended to the parrot's injured wing, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months, a spark of life within her. This tiny being was completely dependent on them, and that awakened something she thought she had lost, the capacity to love and protect. In the first few days, the parrot seemed like a timid, almost indifferent creature, as if unsure about its new home. Sophia and Liam cared for it with dedication but without great expectations. The weight of their grief was so overwhelming that they couldn't imagine something so small making any difference in their lives. As the bird regained its strength, however, something began to change. Not just in the parrot, but in the atmosphere of the house. It started exploring its surroundings with clumsy little steps, tugging at objects with its beak and making curious sounds. The oppressive silence, which had haunted the home like a ghost for months, was broken. Sophia noticed that when she looked at the parrot, she felt something different, a flicker of hope she thought had been extinguished forever. There was something about its fragility, its fight for survival, that mirrored her own struggle. It was as if the bird silently challenged her to allow herself to live again. Liam, on the other hand, observed everything from a distance. He wouldn't admit it, but he found himself smiling as the parrot tried to reach an improvised perch or knock a pen off the table. It was a shy smile, almost strange on his face hardened by pain, but it was a sign that something within him was beginning to stir. Then the magic began. The parrot didn't just bring movement to the house. It also brought sounds that seemed to echo memories. The first time Sophia heard the birds laugh, she froze. It was a familiar sound, so similar to Miguel's laugh that she had to steady herself not to drop the piece of fruit she was holding. One night, while Liam was alone in the living room, the parrot whistled, and he turned to it in disbelief. It was exactly the whistle Miguel used to call their dog. Liam felt a tightness in his chest, but instead of sadness, it was a mixture of longing and comfort, as if for a fleeting moment, their son was there with him. The parrot's behavior became increasingly surprising. It spun in circles in the living room, just as Miguel did when he was excited, or tilted its head to the side with an almost human curiosity. For Sophia, every small gesture was a gift, a bridge connecting her back to memories of her son, but without the overwhelming pain. Liam took longer to admit what he felt. For him, forming an attachment to the parrot seemed dangerous, as if he were allowing himself to replace Miguel. But as the days went by, he realized that wasn't the case. The bird wasn't replacing their son but helping them remember that there was still room for love, joy, and connection, even after such tragedy. The parrot's presence began to transform the house. The air felt less heavy, the windows seemed to let in more light, and even the rainy nights lost some of their oppressive weight. For Sophia, caring for the parrot became an act of love, a testament to her ability to nurture, protect, and give of herself. For Liam, the bird was a quiet reminder that there was still beauty in life, even after so much pain. The parrot became more than just a guest. Unknowingly, it served as a bridge between the past and the future, a messenger that brought movement and sound to a place that had only known silence. The days went by, and the parrot grew stronger. Its injured wing still needed care, but it was now able to explore the house with small, clumsy steps. The sound of its tiny feet against the floor echoed through the living room, replacing the silence that had once suffocated the space. Sophia felt a mixture of joy and fear. Learning to love again was terrifying. Losing Miguel had left a scar so deep that she was afraid to open her heart to another being, even if it was just a bird. But the parrot was persistent. It seemed determined to fill the empty spaces with its presence, and Sophia began to realize that, despite her fear, she was already deeply attached to it. For Liam, the conflict was different. He found himself smiling as he watched the bird play or curl up to sleep on the towel, but those moments of joy were quickly overshadowed by guilt. How can I feel happiness after everything that's happened? He asked himself. Still, he couldn't resist. The parrot seemed to be living proof that life went on, that there was something beyond the pain. The couple, who had once avoided speaking about Miguel, began sharing memories while watching the parrot. It was as if the bird wasn't just bringing movement to the house, but also opening a door for them to reconnect with their own emotions. The parrot's simple presence became a gentle reminder that love, no matter how much it hurts, is always worth taking a chance on. And in its quiet persistence, it began to teach them both how to heal. The morning was clear, with an intense blue sky contrasting the gray days that had defined Liam and Sophia's lives. A soft breeze carried the sounds of birdsong from the woods near their home. But for the couple, this day carried a heavy weight. The parrot was ready to leave, and they knew they could no longer delay his departure. As they walked slowly toward the woods, Sophia clutched the small box that had been the bird's shelter for so many weeks. She couldn't hold back the tears that silently rolled down her cheeks. With every step, her heart seemed to shrink. Part of her wanted to turn back, to take the parrot home and protect him forever. But she knew that keeping him caged would be to deny him the freedom he deserved. Sophia thought about how much that tiny creature had transformed her life. He had made her laugh after months of crushing emptiness. He had brought back a sense of purpose, something she thought she would never feel again. Now, the thought of letting him go felt like reliving another loss. For Liam, the walk felt endless. Each step was a battle within himself. He was torn between logic and emotion. Logic told him the parrot needed to return to nature, to the place he truly belonged. But his heart begged for him to stay, to keep filling the void in their home and, in a way, their souls. They reached an open clearing in the woods, where sunlight filtered through the treetops and illuminated the ground covered in dry leaves. Liam set the box on the ground and slowly opened the lid. The parrot hopped out and looked around with an almost childlike curiosity. Then he turned to face the couple, as if he understood the significance of the moment. Sophia knelt beside him, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face mixed with the tears that streaked her skin. She wished she could explain to the bird how much his presence had meant to her, how he had helped her find strength she thought was long gone. But, of course, all she could do was watch. Liam took a deep breath, trying to contain the emotions threatening to spill out. He extended his arm, inviting the parrot to climb onto it one last time. As he felt the light weight of the bird on his arm, he also felt the heavy weight of responsibility, of letting go. Goodbye, he thought, but didn't say. The parrot hesitated, seemingly looking at them with a mix of gratitude and farewell. Liam knew it was just his imagination, but the gesture broke something inside him, and healed it at the same time. Then, with a strong flap of his wings, the parrot took off. He ascended in spirals, slowly moving farther away until he was just a tiny dot in the sky. Sophia and Liam stood there side by side, their eyes fixed on the horizon. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Tears continued to fall down Sophia's face, but this time, they weren't only tears of sadness. They carried a mix of longing and gratitude. The parrot had taught them something invaluable. The pain of loss never completely disappears, but it is possible to find space for love and hope even after a tragedy. Liam took Sophia's hand, squeezing it firmly. For the first time in a long while, he felt they were truly together, facing the world side by side. When they finally returned home, silence accompanied them, but it was different. It was no longer the heavy silence of grief. It was the silence of a cycle coming to a close, the silence of a farewell that, though painful, was also necessary. The house felt incredibly empty after the parrot's departure. Every corner, once filled with the bird's clumsy movements and charming sounds, was now silent again. But unlike the oppressive silence that had ruled before his arrival, this one carried a different feeling. It was no longer the void of loss but the stillness of something that had fulfilled its purpose and moved on. Sophia sat on the living room sofa, hugging her knees to her chest. She glanced at the spot where the small cardboard box used to be, now empty, and felt a pang in her heart. The parrot had filled a void in her life, but at the same time, it seemed to have left her stronger. She knew he had never been hers to keep, but that didn't lessen the pain of saying goodbye. In the days that followed, Sophia noticed something different about her body. She felt an unusual exhaustion, as if the emotional weight of the farewell had physically manifested. Mornings were marked by a slight nausea, and there were moments when she felt dizzy upon standing. She tried to ignore the symptoms, attributing them to fatigue and the emotional shift she had experienced. Liam, too, felt the absence of the parrot. He often found himself staring out the living room window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the bird flying nearby. Yet, at the same time, he felt a calmness in his heart that had been missing for months. He recognized that something in Sophia had changed during that time, and it reignited in him a desire to be more present for her. One morning, while tidying the house, Sophia felt a wave of dizziness so intense that she had to sit down. The air seemed heavy, and her vision blurred for a moment. Liam, who was in the kitchen, rushed over when he saw her leaning on the table, concern etched on his face. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice thick with worry. Sophia didn't answer immediately. Instead, she placed her hands on her stomach, as if instinctively sensing that something was different. She looked up at Liam, and though she said nothing, her gaze carried a possibility he didn't dare to name. That afternoon, After taking a test and confirming what they both suspected, Sophia and Liam sat in the living room, speechless. The impact of the news washed over them like a wave, bringing a mix of surprise, fear, and joy. Sophia felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they weren't from pain. They were tears of relief she hadn't realized she needed. She placed her hand on her stomach again, now filled with a certainty that completely consumed her. A new life was growing inside her. Liam watched her, his eyes, so often burdened with sadness, now shining with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. He knelt in front of her, placing his hands over hers, as if trying to feel the life they had created together. "We're going to be okay," he said softly, almost as if he were reassuring himself. Sophia nodded, unable to speak. She felt a wave of love wash over her, a love she thought could no longer exist after Miguel. But it was there, growing and expanding. That night, lying side by side in bed, Liam held Sophia's hand tightly. For the first time in a long time, they didn't feel like two strangers bound by grief, but as a couple sharing something greater than their sorrow, the hope of a future. They spoke softly, reminiscing about happy moments with Miguel and dreaming about the new baby. Sophia felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, as if the arrival of this new life was a gift that the parrot, in some way, had helped them receive. Liam kissed Sophia's forehead before drifting off to sleep, and as she felt his steady breathing beside her, she realized she was no longer alone. The journey to that moment had been long, but at last, they were ready to move forward, together. The months following the discovery of Sophia's pregnancy marked a quiet transformation in her and Liam's lives. The news of expecting a baby brought a new rhythm to their home, replacing grief with a movement of preparation and anticipation. Sophia, who had once struggled to even glance at Miguel's room, now found comfort in reorganizing it. She knew changes would be needed for the new baby, yet she wanted to preserve the memories the space held. The wooden rocking chair, built by Liam and loved by Miguel, stayed in its place. For Sophia, it symbolized the continuity of a love that would never fade. Pregnancy brought physical and emotional challenges. Sophia often felt exhausted, but with every small movement within her, life seemed to reaffirm its resilience. The baby's kicks made her smile to herself, and Liam would often place his hand on her belly to feel the movements. In those moments, he realized just how resilient life could be, even in the face of immense loss. They didn't often speak of the parrot, but his memory lingered in the air like an invisible presence. On rainy afternoons, Sophia would glance at the porch, half expecting to see the small bird appear again, wings spread and feathers vibrant. She knew he wouldn't return, but the impact he had left would never fade. Sometimes, Liam thought of him too, especially when he saw other birds flying near the house. He wondered if the parrot was doing well, if he had found his place in nature. Deep down, he liked to believe that the bird, in some way, knew his mission there was complete. Over time, the house began to come alive in ways the couple hadn't experienced in years. Sophia started cooking the dishes she used to make for Miguel, while Liam worked in the garden, creating a small space where the new baby could one day play. With every act, they felt as though they weren't just building a home for the new member of their family, but also healing the wounds that had kept them apart. As the final days of pregnancy approached, a mix of anxiety and joy filled the air. Sophia and Liam were ready in a way they had never thought possible. The arrival of their baby transformed Sophia and Liam's lives in ways they could never have imagined. The hospital had been a whirlwind of emotions, anxiety, exhaustion, and finally, a joy so profound it seemed to dissolve all the pain of the past. Crossing the threshold of their home with the baby in their arms, everything felt new. Every corner of the house that once carried traces of Miguel was now filled with hope. It was as if the laughter and presence of the newest member of their family had renewed their home, bringing a light that had been absent for far too long. That night, after feeding the baby and settling them into the crib in their room, Sophia and Liam sat side by side on the bed. The exhaustion was evident, but there was an indescribable peace between them. Sophia gazed at the tiny being in the crib, so fragile and perfect, and felt a wave of gratitude that made her close her eyes for a moment. Liam reached out and held Sophia's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. For the first time in what felt like forever, they felt whole. The journey to this moment had been long and fraught with challenges, but now, before them, lay a new beginning, a future they were finally ready to embrace. A soft sound broke their thoughts, the faint fluttering of wings. Sophia glanced at the window and, for a moment, thought she was imagining things. But Liam saw it too. There, perched on the windowsill, was the parrot. Its attentive eyes seemed to take in the couple and their baby with curiosity, almost as if it were making sure everything was as it should be. Its feathers gleamed in the soft light of the bedside lamp, more vibrant and alive than ever. Sophia brought her hands to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. It was him, the small messenger who had entered their lives months ago, returning precisely when they needed another reminder that everything was interconnected. The parrot didn't make a sound, but its presence spoke volumes. To Sophia, it seemed as though the bird was saying its purpose had been fulfilled, that the love and strength they had rediscovered were now complete. Liam, his heart racing, stepped forward cautiously, as though any sudden movement might frighten it away. But the parrot remained still, its gaze fixed on the couple and their child. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. There was something magical about this unexpected reunion, something Sophia and Liam knew they could never put into words. Then, gently, the parrot spread its wings, flapped them twice, and took flight. It soared into the night sky, disappearing among the stars. Sophia leaned her head on Liam's shoulder, tears streaming down her face but accompanied by a serene smile. "He came to say goodbye," she whispered softly. Liam wrapped his arms around her, feeling the same. The parrot was more than just a bird. It was a bridge between their past and present, a force that had carried them through their pain and helped them rediscover love. That night, as the baby slept soundly in the crib, Sophia and Liam lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and recounting all the moments that had brought them to this point. They felt closer than ever, as though the parrot had left behind an invisible gift. The certainty that, no matter what happens, life always finds a way to bloom. If you followed the story this far, give it a like, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to hear more stories like this.